1986 was a year filled with memorable moments in both New York and Boston, as two of our country's most storied cities celebrated their team's triumphs throughout the summer.
A new record! Clemens has set a major league record for strikeouts in a game. 20.
Ball well hit to center field. Dykstra over in right center. Jumps and he makes the catch. A brilliant catch by Len Dykstra.
Boggs rips it up the middle. Base hit, 5 for 5. And now hitting .402.
The inevitable has finally become a reality. On September 17th, the New York Mets become champions of the National League's Eastern Division for 1986.
A high pop-up. This may do it. Buckner is there. It's all over. The Red Sox are the new division champions.
Now the stretch. The pitch on the way. Swing and a miss. Swing and a miss. Struck him out. Struck him out. Let's win it. They're in the World Series.
Ciraldi leaping on the mound, and his teammates out there pounding into pieces as the Boston Red Sox have defeated the California Angels and will represent the American League in the World Series.
It's the 83rd version of baseball's Fall Classic as the New York Mets and the Boston Red Sox meet in a Shuttle series. The 1986 World Series between the New York Mets and the Boston Red Sox had all the makings of high drama. After surviving a pair of equally exciting playoff series, both the Mets and the Red Sox went into the World Series hoping to complete a storybook season with a World Championship. Before Game 1, ex-Met Tom Seaver was warmly welcomed back to New York. Although he was hurt, Mets fans obviously remembered Seaver's contribution to the then underdog Mets' miraculous season of 1969. But this was 17 years later, and these Mets were now favored to win it all once again. And when retiring National League President Chub Feeney threw out the first ball, the 1986 World Series was ready to begin. On the mound for the Mets in Game 1, right-hander Ron Darling, while his counterpart from Boston was lefty Bruce Hurst. And right away it became apparent that this night would belong to the pitchers. Inning after inning, both Hurst and Darling kept the bats as chilled as the late October night air. And after 6, the game remained scoreless. But in the 7th, the Red Sox finally got something going. First, Jim Rice led off with one of Darling's 3 walks in the game. Then, with Mets manager Davey Johnson expecting a sacrifice, Darling uncorked a wild pitch, which sent Rice to second and set the stage for the first run of the night.
Coming around to the plate, catcher Rich Gedman.
Rich Gedman's ground ball through the legs of Tim Tuffle enabled Rice to score from second as the Red Sox took a 1-0 lead.
At that point, in that late part of the game, the infielder has to make that play. So this is something that's a nightmare for an infielder. How that happened to him, and whenever it goes through the wickets, it happens. It's the infielder's fault.
Whoever's fault it was, the Mets now needed a run to even the score. But in the 9th, Calvin Ciraldi came on in relief of Hurst, and when he struck out Danny Heap with Raynaud on first, the Sox had a 1-0 win. The underdog Red Sox had jumped out on top, winning Game 1 of the series on the road at Shea. The next night, Mets fans came to Shea hoping to see their team recapture the form that saw them win 108 games during the year. They also came to see a dream matchup between 2 of the best pitchers in baseball. For the Sox, Roger Clemens and his 24-4 record against the Mets' top pitcher, Dwight Gooden, who won 17 games in 1986 after winning 24 himself the year before. Unfortunately for Mets fans, the magic wasn't back on this night either. With the score tied in the top of the third, Roger Clemens set out to sacrifice Spike Owen to second. Clemens bunted straight to Keith Hernandez, but the Mets' usually reliable first baseman threw the ball away, and both runners were safe. Wade Boggs was up next, and when the American League's leading hitter sliced one down the line and left, the Sox had a 1-0 lead. One batter later, Hernandez's error proved even more costly when Marty Barrett singled to right, drove in Clemens with the second run of the inning. The Red Sox scored one more time to take a 3-0 lead, but the Mets rallied for two of their own in the bottom of the inning to get back in the game until the Sox broke it open once again.
Leading off for the Red Sox, center fielder Dave Henderson.
Dave Henderson's leadoff homer in the fourth put a damper on the Mets' comeback. And when the Sox exploded for 5 more runs over the next 5 innings, Boston was on its way to a sweep of the 2 games at Shea. The Red Sox manhandled the Mets' vaunted pitching staff for 18 hits. But maybe even more surprising to some was their play in the field, especially Wade Boggs, whose exceptional fielding at third gave the Sox an added boost, and the Mets even more to think about for the rest of the series. Bob Stanley came on to pitch the final 3 innings in relief, and when he was through, the Sox had a 9-3 win and a surprising 2-0 lead in the series. Because it was just a short hop between Boston and New York, both Mets and Red Sox fans were able to fly back and forth for the game.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Pan Am Flight 532, shuttle service to Boston, now boarding through gate number 2. We ask at this time you have your boarding card ready for the flight attendant and the check-in agent. Thank you.
Of course, that did present some awkward situations, especially among the crew.
Yes, I'm going to keep on rooting for the Mets. It's one of my favorite teams. However, my cohort over here is a Boston fan, so it's been a rather interesting shuttle.
All the Boston fans sit in first class, all the Mets fans sit in the back. It's only fair.
We're descending into Boston, where the local weather in Boston is 56 degrees and clear, similar as it was in Kennedy. Thank you for coming with us. Have a nice day.
With 2 teams involved, having a nice day can be rather subjective. For the Mets, whose collective backs were now up against the wall in more ways than one, the trip to Boston would only be nice if they came away with a couple of wins. As for the Sox, well, nothing could be nicer than getting the 2 victories they needed to take the series. So on this night, the Mets sent their winningest pitcher in 1986, Bob Ojeda, to the mound to help them get back in the series, while the Sox countered with Oil Can Boyd, who got off to a rocky start right away.
Leading off for the Mets, number 4, Lenny Dykstra, center fielder.
Len Dykstra's leadoff homer gave the Mets a lead in the series for the first time, an occurrence which seemed to spur the New Yorkers on to even bigger and better things. Gary Carter's double gave the Mets their 4th consecutive hit and a quick 2-0 lead off Boyd. Then, just when it seemed that things couldn't get any worse for the beleaguered Sox, they did. With runners on second and third and 1 out, Ray Knight grounded weakly to third, and what should have been an easy out turned into an adventure. When the rundown was over, everyone was safe, and then with the bases loaded, Danny Heap's single to center drove in 2 more runs to give the Mets a 4-0 lead after the top of the first. As if the satisfaction of their big inning wasn't enough, the Mets rejoiced some more as Bob Ojeda continually kept the Red Sox off balance, allowing just 5 hits and 1 run in 7 innings. And for the former Boston pitcher, revenge was sweet indeed.
It's kind of weird, coming back here for the World Series. I couldn't have figured it, couldn't have planned it, but it is special. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't special, if it didn't mean something. It's nice to be in it, but against these guys too, it's really ironic.
Roger McDowell came on in the 8th, and when he was finished with his 2 innings of scoreless relief, the Mets had a surprisingly easy 7-1 win at Fenway, which narrowed the Sox lead in the series to 2-1. The next night, before Game 4, the Mets were loose and confident. Their 13 hits of the night before were one more than the previous 2 games combined. And once again, it was Ron Darling's turn to do the pitching. As he had done in Game 1, Darling was once again brilliant, this time shutting out the Sox for 7 innings on just 4 hits. For the Sox, the pitcher was Al Nipper, who was starting his first game in 2.5 weeks. Through the first 3 innings, Nipper matched Darling 0 for 0. But in the top of the 4th, Wally Backman got the Mets going with a single. Then 1 out later, with Backman now on second, it was Gary Carter's turn.
Al Nipper, I've never faced before, and I was just told that he throws a lot of curveball sliders, and he's got it like a screwball. And all I was looking for, first pitch like that with a runner on second, was just to try and drive the ball somewhere, and it left it out a little bit out over the plate, and fortunately I was able to get it up.
Carter's homer was his first in the Mets' 9 postseason games, and it helped stake New York to a 3-0 lead. Then in the bottom of the 5th, with a man on first and 2 out, Rich Gedman lined one off the wall and left. But Mookie Wilson's throw to second got Gedman with ease, putting an abrupt end to a potential Sox rally. And with their best chance now behind them, the Sox then let the game slip away for good.
Number 4, center fielder, Len Dykstra.
With Steve Crawford in relief of Nipper and Mookie Wilson on second with 2 out in the 7th, Len Dykstra hit a towering drive to right, which deflected off of Dwight Evans' glove and fell into the bullpen for a 2-run homer. One inning later, Gary Carter hit his second homer of the game, this time clearing both the wall and the screen to give the Mets a 6-0 lead. After the Sox scored twice in the 8th, Jesse Orosco came on to shut out Boston the rest of the way, as the Mets won Game 4 6-2 to tie the Shuttle series at 2 games each. Almost incredibly, after 4 games, neither team had heard the winning cheers of a home crowd, and the Sox now desperately needed to close out their '86 season at Fenway with a win. To do so, the Sox had hoped that some great hitters from the past might help them recapture their hitting strokes from the first 2 games. But everything about Game 5 pointed to a pitching duel between Boston's Bruce Hurst and the Mets' Dwight Gooden. Gooden, though, was pitching on only 3 days' rest, and in the 2nd, the Sox broke through. With 1 out, Dave Henderson ripped a drive up the alley and right, and when Darryl Strawberry and Len Dykstra both had trouble with the ball, Henderson turned a double into a triple. Boston shortstop Spike Owen then fought off Gooden's attempt for a strikeout and lofted a fly ball to Mookie Wilson in left that proved to be just deep enough to let Henderson score the game's first run. The next inning, the Mets didn't like what they saw either when their usually reliable shortstop, Rafael Santana, let Bill Buckner's check swing grounder get by him for a leadoff error. Then with 2 out and runners on first and second, Dwight Evans singled up the middle. And when Buckner hobbled home, the Sox led 2-0. Meanwhile, the Mets were again failing to solve the mystery of Bruce Hurst. As he did in Game 1, Hurst thoroughly baffled the Mets early on, and then in the 5th, he got all the runs he would need. Jim Rice led off the inning with a towering drive to right center, which caromed off the bullpen wall, allowing Rice to wind up on third with the Sox' second triple of the night. Designated hitter Don Baylor then drove in his first run of the series with a blooper to right, and the Sox had another run. Boston scored one more time in the inning to take a 4-0 lead, but the Mets didn't quit, scoring twice off Hurst before he struck out Len Dykstra to end the game and give Boston the lead in the series.
You can't be intimidated by the wall or the configuration of the ballpark. Just pitch your game. Don't be afraid to go inside. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and you'll do all right. That's basically the way you have to pitch in Fenway Park. You know, we'd worked hard all year. We'd been at our backs to the wall, and we had to go out and have some fun and play hard and just play tonight's game the best we could, and that's what we did.
With Boston now one game up over the favored Mets, the two teams shuttled back to New York, each knowing exactly what they had to do to take the series. The confident Sox, of course, needed just one more win, while the Mets, who had won 55 times at Shea during the season, had to take both games. Boston was after its first championship in 67 years, and the Sox best pitcher, Roger Clemens, set out to get it for them. Bob Ojeda was the man they had to beat, and although he had already beaten them in Game 3, the Sox came out after Ojeda in a hurry. Wade Boggs led off the game with a single off Ray Knight's glove for his 6th hit of the series. Then, with 2 out and runners on first and second, Dwight Evans just missed a homer, lining one off the wall and left to drive in Boggs from second for a 1-0 lead. 1 inning later, the Sox turned a 2-out rally into another run. With Spike Owen on first after a single, Wade Boggs executed a perfect hit and run to put runners on the corner. Marty Barrett followed that one with one of his record-tying 13 series hits, which scored Owen to give Boston a 2-0 lead. The score stayed that way until the bottom of the 5th, when the Mets finally got something going. After leading off the inning with a walk, Darryl Strawberry stole second. Ray Knight followed that with the Mets' first hit of the night, a 2-strike single up the middle, which scored Strawberry to close the Boston lead to 1. Knight later scored, and the game stayed tied until the top of the 7th, when the Mets and Roger McDowell almost let the series slip away. First, McDowell walked the leadoff hitter, Marty Barrett, who was sacrificed to second by Bill Buckner. Then Jim Rice grounded weakly to third, but Ray Knight hurried his throw, and the Sox had runners on first and third with 1 out. Knight had gone from hero to goat in a matter of a few innings, especially when his error proved even more costly after Dwight Evans hit what would have been an inning-ending ground out to second. Still, if Rice hadn't run on the pitch, the Mets could have turned a double play. Instead, the Sox had a 3-2 lead, which they threatened to increase even further when Rich Gedman singled to left one batter later. But Mookie Wilson charged the ball and threw out Rice at home to end the Boston rally. Then in the bottom of the 8th, McNamara made a change Sox fans would later regret, removing Clemens from the game because of a blister and replacing him with Boston's top reliever, Calvin Schiraldi, who got into trouble right away. Lee Mazzilli pinch hit for Jesse Orozco and grounded a single through the hole to right. Then, with everyone expecting a sacrifice bunt, Len Dykstra did just that. Schiraldi fielded the ball cleanly, but threw wild to second, and both runners were safe. After a successful sacrifice by Wally Backman moved the runners to second and third, Keith Hernandez was walked intentionally to bring up Gary Carter. With the bases now loaded, Schiraldi ran the count to 3-0 before Carter surprisingly swung at the next pitch, lining out to Jim Rice in left, deep enough to score Mazzilli from third to tie the score. The game stayed tied at 3 as it moved into extra innings, but in the top of the 10th, Boston made a bid to win the series. With Rick Aguilera now pitching for the Mets, the Sox playoff hero Dave Henderson lined a pitch over the wall and left to give Boston a 4-3 lead. The Sox added another run to go up 5-3. 3 more outs, and the series was theirs. First, Schiraldi got Wally Backman to fly out to left. Then Keith Hernandez flew out to center, and the Red Sox were just 1 out away from a world championship. 1 out away from erasing nearly 7 decades of frustration. But that 1 out never came. Gary Carter began the Mets' unbelievable rally by singling to left. But the Mets still had a tough road ahead of them, especially with rookie Kevin Mitchell up next. But Mitchell, too, shrugged off the pressure, singling to center to put runners on first and second. The Sox tried to remain calm, but the Mets proved to be relentless. At one point, Ray Knight was down to his last strike, but he managed to bloop a single over Marty Barrett's head, which scored Carter and brought the Mets back to within a run. McNamara then decided to remove Schiraldi and bring in Bob Stanley, but the Mets' magic continued.
Now batting for the Mets,
Mookie Wilson was down to his last strike, too, but he kept battling, finally forcing Stanley to throw a wild pitch, which scored Mitchell from third, tying the game. The Sox had just seen their lead and their championship slip away, but now they were about to watch the unwatchable. When Bill Buckner let Mookie Wilson's grounder slip through his legs, the Mets' comeback was complete. Down to their last strike, New York never gave up and stayed alive by winning a miraculous game 6-5 to even the series at 3.
You got 2 outs on your ball club, and it looks like our season's about to end. For us to come back from that is a huge deficit. And I've never run on the field. I've never taken anything for granted that a guy was going to score, but when the ball got by Buckner and I saw where it was, I ran on the field, and I don't usually do that.
How we did it, mirrors, magic wands, whatever, but all that counts is that we won the ball game. We're a team that we just don't give up. You know, we can score in a number of different ways, and 2 runs is not a great deal of runs to make up. I admit with 2 outs, then a little concern might come in, but as it turned out, everyone took 1 at bat at a time, 1 base at a time, and here we are.
This was my dream. I wanted to be out there for the final out, but it didn't work out the way I wanted. It's frustrating, but we still got 1 more game, and we were 1 pitch away, too, and we made it, so we just got to worry about tomorrow now. Today's over with.
Tomorrow, though, brought rain, and with it the postponement of the 7th game. On the surface, that seemed to favor the Red Sox, who the next night were able to have 2-game winner Bruce Hurst on the mound for the finale. But Hurst would be pitching on only 3 days' rest, as opposed to 5 for Mets starter Ron Darling, who had yet to give up an earned run in the series. The atmosphere at Shea was appropriate for a 7th game, and as pomp and circumstance filled the air, both the Mets and Red Sox owners threw out the first ball. But it was Dwight Evans who hit out the first ball. Leading off the top of the second, Evans hammered a Darling pitch over the left field wall to give the Sox a 1-0 lead. Rich Gedman followed that with a deep drive of his own, this time to right, which Darryl Strawberry nearly caught before dropping it over the wall, giving Boston a 2-0 lead. The Sox scored once more in the inning to go up by 3, and then made Davy Johnson's evening all the more painful by giving the ball to Bruce Hurst, who once again continued his mastery over the Mets. The score stayed the same as the game moved into the bottom of the 6th, and for that, the Mets had to be thankful for Sid Fernandez. After replacing Darling in the top of the 4th, Fernandez not only struck out 4 Sox in 2 1/3 innings, he also gave the Shea Stadium crowd something to cheer about. With 1 out in the 6th, Lee Mazzilli pinch hit for Fernandez and single through the hole to left. Mookie Wilson followed that with a single of his own to put the Mets runners on first and second. Then, after a walk to Tim Tuffle, Keith Hernandez delivered the hit that turned the series around. Hernandez's final hit of the series scored both Mazzilli and Wilson, not only cutting the Sox lead to 3-2, but also shifting the momentum to the Mets. One batter later, the game was tied when Gary Carter lofted a pop-up to short right, which Dwight Evans couldn't catch, allowing Backman to score from third with the third run of the inning. Then, in the bottom of the seventh, with Calvin Schiraldi on in relief of Hurst, Ray Knight put the Mets ahead. Knight's homer was one of 3 runs the Mets eventually scored in the seventh, but the Sox weren't about to give up. Bill Buckner led off the top of the eighth with a single, and one batter later, with his teammates urging him on, Jim Rice followed with one of his own. Roger McDowell then faced Dwight Evans, hoping for a double play ball. Instead, Evans doubled to right, scoring both Buckner and Rice to cut the Mets' lead to 1. But Jesse Orozco came out of the bullpen to get the Mets out of the jam, retiring all 3 men he faced to end the inning with the Mets still on top. Then in the bottom of the eighth, the Mets put the Red Sox away. Darryl Strawberry's first homer of the series made the score 7-5. And when the Mets added another run later in the inning, they took a 3-run lead to the top of the ninth. With the Sox now down to their last strike, Jesse Orozco threw a final fastball by Marty Barrett, and a memorable World Series was over. The Mets had won simply because they refused to lose, coming back from the brink to prove that they were indeed the best team in baseball. But let's not forget the Red Sox, who came within 1 strike themselves of being world champions. In the end, though, victory belonged to the Mets, who became only the 2nd team in history to win a series after losing the first 2 games at home. So it was New York which got to celebrate, honoring its heroes for a year to remember. Especially Ray Knight, MVP of a series in which both teams showed their true colors.
This one makes you crazy and you take